Yo, YouTube podcast world, man. What's up? Back again from the whole Page and Plays podcast here. Special guest right here, man. I've been watching this guy for a minute, man, for like the last 4 years, like pandemic. No bullshit. Got my guy JT Sports, cover football 24/7 more than I do. What's up, bro? You all right?
Yes, sir. What's going on, man? I like the dreadhead game.
Oh, of course, bro. You already know, man. You already know. So, like, I knew about your channel when I was living in North Carolina, actually. I'm from Michigan, which is why we'll talk about Michigan football later on. And I'm like, yo, like, I didn't even know how old you were at the time, bro. And I'm like, bro, this guy knows his shit. And, like, that's something that gets to me because if you could talk ball, it don't matter what age it is, man. But your Steelers, man. I saw one of your videos. You said 7-10 is your season prediction. I was a little shocked for that. But when I thought about it, if you look through week 10 through the end of the season, you play the whole AFC North, and then you play Pittsburgh. I mean, well, then you play Philly, then you play Kansas City. And that right there, that 2 months, last 2 months of the season to me, I think is why I can see you saying 7-10.
Yeah, for me, it's just I don't like the quarterback situation. Russell Wilson, he's old and washed up. He's a diminishing asset. We got to remember the Denver Broncos, if he was so good, they wouldn't have taken a record dead cap hit to get rid of this dude. You feel me? He was being coached by Sean Payton. Everybody's trying to villainize Sean Payton because he held Russell Wilson accountable. When he first got there, he had to tell Russell Wilson to clean out his own office and his own personal locker. Like, imagine you being a teammate, and the only way you can talk to your quarterback after practice is you got to walk to his office. You feel me? That don't sound a little bit weird to you?
Yeah, I think that's why Marshawn Lynch even said why he thought, like it was like some coon activity. So that kind of makes sense.
So it's like
Um,
it's not
but
surprising
go
why
ahead.
Russell Wilson is playing on the veteran minimum. Because if he was as good as what Steeler fans believe he still is, they just want to disregard the last 2 years in Denver and not like we're still about to get the flash in the pan that was him in Seattle, which that's far from the case. He isn't good anymore. If he starts this year, he's going to put the Steelers in the worst case scenario possible, which is possibly being a 6, 7 win team. Now, if you start Justin Fields, I think the upside is way more higher. You could manage to sneak into the postseason as a 7 seed because he gives you a little bit more upside just with how good he is running the football and the dynamic that he could have sharing the backfield with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, which is what the Steelers want to do anyway, be a run first team and be very dominant doing that. And with Justin Fields, we know how good of a rusher he is. He automatically is going to upgrade your offense because you're guaranteed to have no worse than the top five rushing attack.
Right. It's kind of equivalent because I think it's like I think he's better than him, but he kind of reminds me of like Cordell Stewart when he was with Pittsburgh. Cordell was able to do a little bit of everything. And when you are in the AFC North, I think cold weather, you need to run the ball. And, I like what I've seen a little bit from practice. And here's my thing. If I know he's supposed to play a couple of drives this Friday against Houston, but what I'm thinking is if he plays every game in the preseason, and I know Russell Wilson is out with a calf injury, are they going to throw Russell Wilson as a starter week one? And that's my thing is when he struggled with Denver the first year because he didn't play any snaps in the preseason. I mean, I'm not expecting you to play every game, but I mean, if you go into a new team, new system, but you see Houston also playing against you guys, they have all their starters playing, which I like that to a degree. It's a young core, it's some new pieces. You got to play them. I know it's a risk of injury, but hell, look at Kansas City. They're talking about playing their starters for the whole quarter. I mean, like that's something that we don't normally see, but it makes the chemistry and the flow better. So when it is time for the serious play, now that it's like 3 games is different. I remember in the preseason when it was 4, week 3 was like the real thing where everybody played at least a half. But with Pittsburgh, I mean, I like Tomlin. I like him as a coach, man. And I'm going to say it now. I got $200 on him against Atlanta because I'm just that confident. I think they'll beat Atlanta. Atlanta, to me, looking at everybody, Atlanta's probably the slowest offense I've seen. And I think they say about Rendell Morris, like might
Yeah,
have a torn
Rondell Moore, he
ligament.
broke his leg. Yeah, he's done. Yeah.
Non-contact play. Like that's some shit. Like, but
And that's a good pick because new head coaches week one have losing records historically. You don't
agree.
really see a lot of new head coaches with their new teams win right out the gate.
Agree. And then you know who the offensive coordinator is for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Arthur Smith.
So you think he wouldn't know what Kyle Pitts can do? You think he wouldn't know? All he can do is tell Tomlin, hey, like, because honestly, with Drake London, I like Drake London, but if you can jam him, he gets fits. And Kyle Pitts, he's not a tight end. Let's just kind of call it a crap. He's not a tight end. I never seen him, block the edge. I mean, we know Kelsey is a receiving tight end, but hell, Kelsey can hit that damn edge if he need to. You know,
But the
it's
thing
just
with Kyle Pitts though is that it's not more so like he's not a tight end. He's not a traditional tight end. He's the new hybrid wide receiver
yeah,
slash tight end. But it's like
yeah,
with the new system that they have in place now, the problem with him playing under Arthur Smith is that we know Kyle Pitts' biggest weakness coming out of Florida was his inability to block defensive end, defensive linemen. And that's kind of the reason why he kind of favored Jonnu Smith a little bit more, because he's more so of that blocking X tight end that you're looking for. Kyle Pitts is more of a Y, just your straight primary receiving tight end. So I think with him having a new coaching staff there, he definitely should flourish, especially with having better quarterback play. I expect him to get the Steelers a lot of problems just because the Steelers do seem to struggle with those styles of tight ends because they never have good linebackers that are good in coverage. They normally have linebackers that, you run downhill, you fill the gaps, and you're really good against the run.
yeah. So like my thought is with like Pittsburgh is like, what do you think about the situation with Aiyuk? Because like at first I heard it was Cleveland, and then I heard it was New England, but then New England don't want to give up Kendrick Bourne. I kind of understand that. And then I hear Pittsburgh out of nowhere, and like I heard three different teams, and no one's confirmed what it is. I don't really like. Is he just looking for the better number? Because he could have went to New England if that was the case. And I know you want to win, but I don't get the mindset with him, man. It's like,
So New England just dropped out of the Aiyuk sweepstakes a few hours ago because they were willing to make him one of the top five highest paid receivers in the game. The problem was he just didn't want to go to New England, probably because, it's a lot of question marks with the coaching staff, the quarterback
yeah,
play. Plus, it's Foxborough, Massachusetts. No offense to all the New Englanders out there in Boston. They got a really good fan base, but me and you probably want to be wanting to go move up there. And I'm pretty sure,
man. So also, it reminds me of like if he went there, well, it was different, but like looking at like Cam Newton and Steve Smith. You remember when Cam Newton was a rookie and Steve Smith was like, all up on him, give me the ball, and it took Steve Smith to leave for Cam Newton to kind of flourish. So I actually
yeah.
kind of understand that. But let's
So
go into the subject with college football. Give me five teams that no one's talking about that I should probably be paying attention to.
this first one, everybody's talking about them, but they're not talking about them the way that they should. You know who I'm about to mention, but Coach Prime in Colorado, man, people making the mistake of judging this team based off what they were last year, and they're overlooking the improvements that Coach Prime has made via the offseason. New coaching staff on defense. You got a lot of guys in the trenches now, improved offensive line, several guys on the D line this year who started at Power Four universities.
Mhm.
So this is a team that now, with you having an improved offensive line, Shedeur should put up Heisman numbers. 27-3 TD INT ratio behind the worst offensive line in America, regardless if he holds on to the ball too long, with an old line that can give him more than zero point 0.8 of a second to throw, like what he had against UCLA. He's going to put up video game like numbers because their wide receiving core is top five, top 10 in the nation coming into this year. I won't say top five, but they're definitely top 10. They're like 5, 6 guys deep. They got a really good running back in Dallin Hayden. He didn't start at Ohio State, but when you can average 5 yards per carry with that limited amount of volume, you're a really good back. So Colorado is one of those teams that everybody expects to be bad, and they just come out and surprise everybody. I have them winning the Big 12 this year.
Ooh,
In the SEC, I
ooh.
got a couple of
Can we
teams because
pause that? Say that one more time.
Colorado is going to be one of those teams everybody expects to be bad, but they end up surprising everybody, and they're better than expected.
Winning the Big 12.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so like the thing about it though is like you're right, the offensive line play was awful. And the one game that I could say that was so awful was that game against Washington State. Shedeur was getting blown out. I think one possession, it was like 3 sacks. Like I think it was literally 3 and out off sacks. And I think that's when he like fractured something that game, which is
Yeah,
why
and
he
it's
didn't
bad.
play the game against Utah.
Mm-hmm. He played
And
with that for like a good amount of the season. Like he had to get
yeah,
like injections and IVs and stuff.
yeah, yeah. Pretty much reminds me of Bliss to Lead, when you get hurt, it's pop steroid in you. But like the thing about the Big 12 is I'm just I mean good value, but like I just can't say that because I think Utah, even with Cam Rising coming back, and like a lot of these teams will be going into Utah. And I don't know if you know about out west, but like that elevation, like I mean, I've been to Colorado.
Yeah,
So
it's
like that
different.
elevation is just like if you don't drink a lot of water, bro, you're gonna pass the hell out. So you're thinking about a team like UCF going to Utah. I mean, look what Florida did against Utah. Look how like they were in the game to a degree, but it's just different by playing at Salt Lake City. So like I think Utah makes the playoffs. That's just my head of thing, which means I think they win the Big 12. But I wouldn't be shocked about Colorado. The schedule is it's a little easier for them, but it's just I'm questioning their defense. It's really the defense for me, man. Because how much can Shiloh Sanders and Travis Hunter do so much, man? So and don't sleep on that game against Nebraska. So I know people think that's a cakewalk game, and this used to be a big rivalry back in the day when they were both in the Big 12. But with I feel so old with Dylan Raiola. See, I'm from Detroit, so the center was Dominic Raiola. That's his dad. That's why he went to Nebraska. His dad went to Nebraska, and I watched some of that spring game, and he was slinging the ball. That's something that Nebraska hasn't seen since we can go back to Zach Taylor when he was a quarterback. That's how long ago I've seen Nebraska really throwing the ball like that. And I think in the back of my mind, like they remember getting blew the hell out against Colorado. So that's not going to be an easy game, but all the other games should be, it should be possible. UCF does have KJ Jefferson. I keep forgetting that. And, that's kind of a threat too, but let's go into it. What's the second one, bro?
I'm gonna just pick up from where you started off. Nebraska, as a matter of fact, they returned a lot of experience on defense. They had a top 15 unit on that side of the football. And there were times when that defense was scoring more than the offense. If they would have had, somewhat serviceable QB play last year, they go from being a 5-win team to possibly a 6, maybe 8-win team. Now with Dylan Raiola, they started a true freshman quarterback a few years ago with Scott Frost. I don't know if you remember him, Adrian Martinez, but he was pretty
Adrian
decent his
Martinez.
first couple of years. So for Dylan Raiola, if he can just give them competent play this year, they definitely could be above average team and a really good Big Ten this year. This is probably the strongest that we have seen the Big Ten be in the last couple of years, because the last 4 or 5 years since the downfall of Wisconsin, it's only been 3 teams in this conference that have mattered. Matt Rule has a really good receiver core. It's not deep, but you got a few guys there that are capable of making plays, capable of running back. But really, this is going to be a team where as long as they take care of the football, Dylan Raiola can be efficient. Their defense is going to be the main reason why they win a lot of these games. So I have them going around 7, 8 wins. Another team that's being really overlooked is Kentucky. Kentucky
Mm.
is one of those programs
We're
that
not
when
talking
you
about basketball, Kentucky, right? We're
no,
talking about
we're
football,
yeah, we're
Kentucky,
talking
right?
about football. Exactly. But
Okay.
the thing with Kentucky football is that consistently they're not going to be a 9, 10-win team every year. But they're one of those programs that, despite them not recruiting as good as the other top schools in the SEC, every 2-3 years, they could have a big season when they win 9-10 games because the guys who they did recruit, they do a good job developing them and getting them ready for the next level. And there's been a couple of instances, 2021, even though that season got invalidated because they had some ineligible players. But with Will Levis, his first year at Kentucky, they won 10 games. A few years prior with Benny Snell and Terry Wilson at QB, they won 9 games. They won the Citrus Bowl that year. With the talent that they're going to have up front, offensive line, defensive line, there's going to be several guys from those units that end up being drafted on Sundays. If you can get capable quarterback play out of Brock Vandagriff, the transfer from Georgia, he was a top 7 rated quarterback from this past portal cycle. This could be a really dangerous team because they got two really good receivers. Barry and Brown is on a lot of NFL radars. Dane Key, both of those two guys were 4 stars coming out of high school. They've been held back because of lackluster QB play. You know that Mark Stoops always has a good defense, and he's always going to have capable running back play. Kentucky really is a team that I could see being a dark horse college football playoff contender. Now, the 4th team is in the ACC, is Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is being incredibly overlooked, and it's surprising because during, the dark days or the dog days of the offseason when there's nothing to talk about, there's no news going around, people just start ranking teams. I saw Virginia Tech in a lot of top 25s, but I don't see them in a lot of preseason polls for some reason. And it's shocking because they're going into year 3 under head coach Brent Pry. And normally, when you have a head coach who's entering year 3 that has shown growth his first 2 seasons, with Virginia Tech being top 15 in returning production, they returned all of their starters on offense from last year. They returned 8 starters on defense, and they improved in certain areas with a few guys they got from the transfer portal. You normally see teams like Virginia Tech have big years where they get the 10, 11 wins if they have a favorable schedule because they profile a lot like last year's Missouri team. Remember, Missouri, they had experienced defense, returned a lot on offense, and they had a favorable schedule. Virginia Tech has the same thing. And the good thing is, with how their schedule lines up, their 2 biggest tests early are going to be against Rutgers, who could be a sleeper team if they got QB play this year, and they got to play Miami early. There's a really strong chance that maybe we see Virginia Tech hosting the home game week 8 where they're 7-0 against Clemson.
So with Virginia Tech, right? I messed with them a few times in the betting world last season. Losing to Rutgers that bad was one thing, right? But losing to Marshall, I mean, it wasn't like a convincing. It was like they got blew off the field that game. But I feel like that game against Marshall was what made this team better towards the end of the year. So they got to win games like that. I think they play Marshall again this year. But it's at home this time. They have to blow them the hell out. Because I know the difference with college football is style points too. When you blow out some of these teams, it makes you look good. But with Virginia Tech, I like Dwayne Washington. I like him as a quarterback. I like him. But I guess now is he just has to grow because sometimes he was just throwing the ball, throwing the damn ball. But
so Kyron Jones last year, he was very inconsistent. He completed under 60% of his passes and a lot of their losses. And that was his first year ever starting at quarterback. He was somebody who was like a highly touted 4-star guy, initially started out at Baylor. And he's one of those big Anthony Richardson kind of quarterbacks, got all the physical tools, got the athleticism, but you still have to develop him as a passer. If he takes that next step this year, which he should, because he has the same group of wide receivers, the same offensive line with the kind of experience and the camaraderie that Virginia Tech should have. A lot of games that they struggled to win last year, they should easily be able to erase those guys off the board. Rutgers, it's not a guarantee.
It's the Sopranos, bro. You have to respect Schiano. Like, Schiano was...
And Rutgers is a team, believe it or not, that a lot of people really believe could shock people because they got a really good team up front, both sides. They got a good squad. If they can get a decent QB in there, they could be dangerous this year.
Yeah.
But
They
Virginia
never had
Tech
a good
though,
quarterback, bro. Like if you go back to the Ray Rice and I don't know, even remember Brian Leonard, the era, they were a run first team. Isaiah, but they were always a run first team with Greg Schiano and just played defense. I think the one thing with Schiano that did help him before he went back to Rutgers was he was under Ryan Day at Ohio State. So, and you can argue that's probably the last time they were able to beat Michigan because they had somebody like that behind them as defense. But what's your 15?
my last team is I'm gonna have to go with this is a tough one. I'm gonna have to go with Miami. Miami's a sleeper to me because everybody's going off the stereotype of it's Miami. You know what Miami always does: off-season champions get to the season and they disappoint like always. This is truly the best team Miami has had since the early 2000s. And we say that every offseason, but when you look at the talent on this roster across the board, they're stacked. You know, you got a lot of guys returning on that offensive line. Mario Cristobal is a former offensive lineman. That area should be the strongest. You got Cam Ward, Damian Martinez, both the two best running backs and quarterbacks in the portal from this past cycle, capable wide receivers. You know, Miami recruits better than nearly everybody in the ACC, even Florida State. So the talent's in place for them to win it all in terms of the ACC title. You just need the coaching. And I believe in Mario Cristobal. I'm not a huge believer in him, but he did beat Ohio State on the road when they were the third best team in the nation a few years ago. And he didn't even have Justin Herbert. He had Anthony Brown at QB, and he won 12 games, won the Pac-12 that year. So this is somebody who has proven the ability to build up a program, have a big year. The problem with him is, can he sustain a high level of success? You know, I don't have no question that Miami will be a playoff team this year. My question is, what comes after this big season? You know, can it be sustainable or is it just a flash in the pan?
Yeah, man. With Miami, it's crazy for me to say this. Like, I haven't seen them be really good. I mean, you said since 2000s. I'm trying to think of the last time I can remember.
2017, they went 10-2. They
Oh yeah,
had
they
that
lost to
stretch when
Clemson
they
in the
beat Notre
championship game,
Dame.
right?
Yeah, Virginia Tech.
I because I'm really sitting here trying to remember because I remember watching the biggest rivalry all the time was them in Florida State. And Florida State missing field goals back to back years wide right. I remember watching all that as a kid. You know, besides Michigan, my dad was a huge fan of Miami. So we're talking about the starter jackets back then. I had all of that Miami Hurricane. He was a big Hurricane fan. So I've always been accustomed to Miami Hurricanes, but after the class when Ed Reed and Antrell Rowe left, I remember the first game, it was Labor Day. I was living in North Carolina as a kid. They played Florida State, and this is when they had Devin Hester. And they went 7-5 that year. And then ever since then, they just been out of the blue, you know. So we'll see how Miami goes into it. But how do you feel about the new transition with the realignment with now you having Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC? I personally think that Texas will struggle. You know, I think 10-2 was realistic because I think they'll lose to Georgia. And they'll lose a game where they shouldn't lose, but they'll win, they'll lose because it's not the Big 12 where you play BYU who's still trying to, adjust to Big 12 life. You're not playing against Cincinnati. The only tough opponent realistically was Kansas State and Oklahoma. Well, now you're playing Alabama. I don't even think they play Alabama this year. I think Oklahoma plays Alabama this year. But it's the fact that now you're every week, it's not an easy week.
Man, I really don't understand why people judge Texas and Oklahoma based off the conference that they came from instead of judging them from what they are as a program. Texas and Oklahoma have always been SEC ready because they recruit at a SEC level. As a matter of fact, they recruit better than nearly every team but about two programs, that being Georgia and Alabama. Texas, Oklahoma have both had top 10, top 5 classes the past 3 years. Texas has only been down, not because they haven't had the talent, but because they've been unable to find the right coach. Steve Sarkisian looks to be that guy. And they went on the road, beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, who's only lost less than 10 games at home the last decade
Yeah,
since
losing to the GOAT,
2010.
beating the GOAT at Bama was shocking to me. I'm like,
And the year before that, year one with Quinn Ewers, they gave Alabama a dogfight, even though they lost that game to a last minute field goal late. The greatness of Bryce Young won that game for Bama. Texas has more than shown the ability that they can hang with the SEC. They can beat the best teams. The talent's there. The coaching is really the biggest question. How is Steve Sarkisian going to be going from a big fish in a small pond to being a big fish in the ocean with coaches that are just as good as him? Oklahoma, I love Oklahoma this year. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Oklahoma sneak into the college football playoffs because they're one of the most complete teams entering this season in the SEC. Their only biggest concern really is the offensive line, but they do got a really good offensive line coach. They got receivers. They got probably, in my opinion, the best secondary in the SEC this year. Not only do they have guys who are going to be NFL prospects, but they also have a secondary that was top 5 in the nation and forced takeaways. That secondary, guys like Billy Bowman. You also got linebacker Danny Stutzman, who was an All-American last year. The problem with Oklahoma that has haunted them under Brent Venables since he got there was that Lincoln Riley didn't really do a good job of having the kind of players that you need on the defensive line. So now with them getting the transfer from TCU, Dominic Williams, who LSU really wanted, they got a dude from Miami of Ohio. That pass rush is going to be solidified. That secondary should still be as good, if not better than what it was last year. Many people don't understand just how truly deep Oklahoma is in the secondary. All those guys, 4 stars or
oh
better.
yeah.
So Oklahoma and Texas have always been SEC quality programs just playing in the Big 12. And one more point I would like to make is it doesn't matter if you have a team that comes from a weak conference. You can still be a national championship caliber team playing in the worst conference in college football. Sometimes it could be a benefit and it could be negatives to that. We've seen Washington win a weak Pac-12, get blasted by Alabama, but we've seen Clemson win a weak ACC. People question just how legitimate are they to be worthy of making it to the playoffs, and we see them win it all, smash Notre Dame, blow out Alabama 44-6 or 44-16. I
Yeah,
forgot
that
what the
was
score
Tua, right?
was.
Second year, right?
So it's like even if you're coming from a weak conference, you can still be a really good team. It's just all about your recruiting, how talented you are, and if you got the coaching. And Texas, Oklahoma, they both have the coaching. I'll be really surprised if either one of these programs wins anything less than 9 games this year.
Yeah, I think the SEC. I did watch it live last night. I enjoyed it, by the way. I do see the SEC about a few teams going 9-3. It's crazy to say that and piggyback to the playoffs. I mean, I actually like that it's 12 games, 12 teams, should I say. I like it because it's more variety. Now, the downside is, which I think you would say is, because you got SEC teams that's going to be top 15, top 12. We know about at least there's always about 5 or 6 of them in the top 10 alone.
Did you see the
And
coaches poll? So they dropped the coaches poll. It was 8 SEC teams, and the second conference was the Big Ten with 6, and everybody else had 4 or less.
yeah, like if you're talking about like how you say you think Colorado makes the playoffs, that means that's one team in the Big 12, you know? So, oh, let me see, check that out. Okay. So that's just how I look at it. But I do think that Penn State, I think that's the most underrated team that can make the playoffs because let's be real, they play against Michigan, Ohio State, and always get blew out. But they beat every other team that they should beat. So I think they're always going to be in it. And that's just how I look at it about Penn State. Like, I'm not really all into it, but if you can give me one team that can make it out of the group 4, I think Liberty would probably be the more favorable to make it, but who would you pick?
I really like Boise State because they get the former USC quarterback. Boise State kind of has more of a consistent track record when it comes to being a quality G5 team. They're not one of those G5 teams you just put on the schedule and you're like, yeah, you feel me? It's a dub. You feel me? When you play Boise State, you got to look out for them. And I could see Tulane. The
Hmm.
only problem is that they lost their head coach to Houston, but their new head coach, this dude was talking hella spicy in his first press conference, talking about something. He ain't come down to Tulane just to, coach at Tulane. Like he really believes they can win some national championships down there, get to the playoffs. So we'll see, because Tulane does have probably the best roster in the G5 out of all of the group of 5 schools. So it'll either be a tie between Boise State or Tulane.
Okay, I want to talk about one game, week 1, real quickly. Then we'll talk about NFL preseason. I'll let you go for the day. Um, I've seen Clemson underdog by almost 2 touchdowns against Georgia. I know it's going to be at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
So it's a home game.
Yeah, am I wild for picking Clemson to at least cover that game? Because I just think that like people keep forgetting that like Dabo Swinney is a good coach. Like, and the last time they played against Georgia, it was in Charlotte, and it was a slugfest game. I know we're not talking about Brent Venables there anymore as a defensive coordinator, but it
Their
wasn't an
defense is
easy
still really
game.
good.
I mean, for 2 touchdowns, like I know. Come on, man. Am I tripping for picking Clemson?
You see, I really don't have an answer for you when it comes to this one, because this is a game that I believe Clemson has to show us that they still are elite program.
Yeah, because
Because from a talent standpoint, defensively, they got nothing but NFL guys on that roster, and first round caliber guys at that too. And we know the defense is going to be really good. I believe their defense can match up with Georgia's offense pretty well. They're pretty good in the secondary, strong up front. That's what you need to be able to have a shot to beat Georgia. The question is the offense.
yeah,
I don't,
yeah.
right now, I don't believe you're crazy to take Clemson plus 13, because they got Lincoln Riley's brother. Don't know if you know this, but he has a brother named Garrett Riley. He was the dude who was the offensive coordinator for TCU the year they got blown out by Georgia in the Natty, but he
Mm.
won the Jim Boros Award that year. That goes to the nation's best assistant coach. So he goes from TCU to Clemson, and a lot of people were a little bit surprised that even happened, because he was seen as a dude who was only going to be there for no more than a year until he got a head coaching job. And this should be the year where, going into year 2 under him, that offense should really click. Cade Klubnik's in his 3rd season as a starter. What has held Clemson back in the past shouldn't hold them back anymore. They got some really good wide receivers. You got Antonio Williams, who should be their number 1. They got a really good true freshman and Trayvon Wesco, I believe that's his name, number 12. And they got somebody else who's a true freshman who should have a good season. So this is the best that their wide receiving position has been in the last couple of years. And remember, they used to have a stretch where they were pumping up guys consistently. Sammy Watkins, Mike Williams,
Right.
Martavis Bryant. And then after Justin Ross, they kind of went cold, but now they kind of have reloaded. And their offensive line, they got one of the best offensive line coaches in the nation from Georgia. And you see with Clemson, the biggest knock on them, I know you've heard it, they don't use the transfer portal.
They
So
don't.
with you not utilizing the transfer portal, you got to be able to recruit guys and develop them. But
Yeah,
if
and
you
they don't
have a
have
weak,
NIL money like that either, though.
they got NIL money.
But
You
they
feel
don't
me?
use it.
Yeah, because they don't like utilizing the transfer portal, because it's not an NIL thing, it's a philosophy thing. Because what people don't understand about utilizing the transfer portal is that you can only have 85 guys on the roster on scholarship. And once you go over that, you have to cut guys. I have
Right.
had friends that played D1 who got cut. The coach told them, hey, like, you got to transfer. We don't got a spot for you. So for Clemson, with you not utilizing the transfer portal, you just relying on recruiting, there's going to be some holes that are going to take a while to fix versus if you utilize the transfer portal. So against Georgia, I like them to cover that plus 13 because I see them losing by 10. I would be really shocked if we see Clemson get dog wall. Plus, we remember what happened last year, week 1. They got blowed the hell out by Duke. That
Yeah.
was embarrassing.
Yeah. Yeah. We know about that one. That one
And my
was
last point, Dabo Swinney loves playing that underdog card. And for a while, he's been unable to do it because Clemson has always been viewed as the top dog, the top predator. But now it's like everybody's riding off Clemson. Not too many people think they can be a playoff team against Georgia. He's going to have those boys amped up, ready to play. So I can see them keeping it close.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Michigan, and I'm gonna let you talk before because I gotta do something while you're talking, but I will be listening. I know it's going to be a transition season for them. I'll be honest with people. I didn't bet a Michigan game until Alabama, and I picked the over, and I barely hit because that game had to go into overtime. So I think this year I would be back fishing them because they're going to be slept on. I think that game against Texas would kind of let us see what they're about. But I mean, what do you think about Michigan as an overall? I think this year is going to be the most shittiest year, but after that, I think we'll be A-okay.
If they get good quarterback play, they could go right back to the Big Ten championship. Just keeping in the
Absolutely.
stack because Sharon Moore, Jim Harbaugh has the habit of leaving places better than he found them. When he left Stanford, they had David Shaw. They were still dominating the West Coast. 49ers had some down years, but once Kyle Shanahan got there, they got right back to where they were before. So with Jim Harbaugh leaving, I definitely do think there's going to be a steep decline, but Sharon Moore kind of already has the mindset that Jim Harbaugh has. Nothing is going to change. They want to run the football down your throat. They want to prove that they're tougher, more physical than you on the line of scrimmage. They got a lot of good players on defense. Mason Graham could be a top 5 player in next year's draft that goes off the board. He's the best defensive tackle in America, great against the run, fantastic pass rusher. Will Johnson. And I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Wink Martindale, their defensive coordinator. So
Absolutely.
you're still going to be running an NFL style defense that's going to be aggressive, really blitz heavy. A lot of Big Ten opponents are going to struggle against this defense still. Quarterback is the biggest question mark because it was assumed to be Alex Orji's job. And Alex Orji is another one of these Anthony Richardson clones. He looks really good with the shirt off, cut up, all kinds of
Right.
abs and whatnot, and insane athlete. Like this dude can really tote that rock. He's probably the closest thing that we have in college football to Anthony Richardson because he does have that really rare twitch for a guy of his size, 6'4", 6'5", 230 plus. But like Anthony Richardson, we don't know how accurately he can throw the football. And
Yeah,
Michigan
he's a
is the
very
team.
athletic guy, but I don't see too much of him throwing the ball. I've seen a lot of running, and if you want to play high school football, you're going to get blew the fuck out. That's just really my opinion with that. We had Rich Rodriguez, and I think I was talking to you about this not long ago. You said Graham Mertz was a better passer than Anthony Richardson, and this is when I chimed in and said, well, it depends about the system, man. Like with Rich Rodriguez, if you can remember the old times, people would tell you like him and Pat White, oh my God. And Pat White was a receiver going into West Virginia. It wasn't and look how like Pat White became. So, I like the system, what Michigan can do if they're going to run the ball, but like you said though, we need to definitely see them pass the ball a lot more. But the Big Ten though, throughout all of my life, Big Ten has always been a ground and pound. The reason why Rich Rod didn't work out in Michigan was because you can't have 250-pound linemen. Against and Ohio State was just blowing it out. I mean, it took them to lead to actually win the game, and then we had to deal with Brady Hoke. And God, listen, I'll be honest about Brady Hoke, bro. He was a good defensive coordinator, but a horrible head coach. It was just you had to sit there and see what I'm talking about with this guy, man.
He was the coach who lost Appalachian State in 07, right?
Brady Hoke. No, Brady Hoke was coaching. He was coaching San Diego State.
Okay, so he was the dude who Michigan was getting ran over by when they played Ohio State.
Yeah. Well, no, the first year. So the first year, no. The first year they won with Denard Robinson. And
Oh, okay,
then because
okay,
they played
okay.
Virginia Tech in the Sugar Bowl. But we were getting blown out by Kirk Cousins and them in Michigan State. Kirk Cousins beat us 4 years in a row.
And that's when Urban Meyer came in and started rolling.
Yeah. Yeah, after they had Luke Fickle for like that's when Jim Tressel got into that mess with Terrell Pryor and all of them. If you
Yeah.
remember Terrell Pryor. Terrell
Yeah. Oh,
Pryor
I
actually
remember him.
little people know he screwed Michigan because the reason why Michigan got rid of Rich Rod so quick was because they were trying to recruit Terrell Pryor, and it was Michigan and Ohio State. That was his two top teams. And when Ohio State, he ended up picking Ohio State, it screwed over Michigan because the system is made for you gotta have some legs, man. And that's why I say what AR, like with Bailey Napier's system, it's made for a mobile quarterback. Now we're talking about Napier. I think Napier ass is out of here though. I don't know how long he lasts. I mean, trust me, because you play Texas this year. I mean, you play against some teams, man. I think about maybe week 8, 9. I think he's out.
I think he'll last the season because, back to the Michigan point first, it's like with Michigan, you got to be able to throw the football regardless how dominant you'll be on the ground because that's what made Michigan so potent last year on offense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you knew they can run it, but they also could throw the football when need be. JJ McCarthy didn't lose you any games. With Alex Orji, you need him to be able to still keep the defense off balance so you don't get too predictable. With Billy Napier's system, Graham Mertz had more experience than Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson didn't really play too much before Napier got there. He was being swapped between Emory Jones
Yeah, I
under
remember.
Dan Mullen. So when Billy Napier got there, he got this really toolsy athletic quarterback that he didn't really know what to do with, which is why Graham Mertz was more efficient in his system last year because Graham Mertz is a more accurate quarterback. Doesn't have the kind of physical abilities, but he has experience. He's played more snaps, and he just was a better fit in terms of what Billy Napier wants to be offensively. I don't see Billy Napier getting fired during the season because I can't see Florida just quitting on him. And I don't even think they fired Dan Mullen until like after the Missouri loss. Florida is one of those
I think they got
programs.
rid of him after they lost to that UCF bowl game.
Well, I think they got rid of him before that. I think they had like an intern. I think it was after
Probably,
Missouri
probably, yeah, probably
because
so.
the team just flat out quit on him in that game. It was a really ugly loss. Guys in the locker room were going roughshod. I don't see the same thing happening with Billy Napier. And Billy Napier's teams, have shown the ability to compete. There were a few wins that they could have had last year against some really good teams. They barely lost to Missouri. You feel me? That's a game they could have won if they had better coaching. It's a lot similar to how Scott Frost's tenure at Nebraska was, in my opinion. Remember that year that got him that one last season where people said they were the greatest three-win team ever because they lost nearly every game by one possession.
Yeah,
So with Billy Napier, his teams have the ability to do that because it's not like Florida doesn't have no talent. They got a really good team this year, but with how bad the coaching is, bad clock management, bad in-game decision making, you're not going to be able to beat Texas in the close game if it gets there. Especially on the
right.
road. So I don't think Billy Napier's teams will quit on him. The locker room does seem to really like this dude a lot. They will fight for him. They'll play for him as evident as last year. But I just don't think he's a coach that's meant to be to be coaching in the SEC. And I seen somebody, I don't know if you know who Josh Pate is, but he said if you put
Mm-hmm.
Florida and the Big 12, they would be a top 3 team. They probably would win that conference.
Yeah,
I get where he's coming from, but if we're knocking Deion Sanders in Colorado for questionable coaching, I will have to do the same thing with Billy Napier. He hasn't shown the ability to win at a Power 5 or Power 4 level. So I
right.
just can't say you'll automatically win when you're going up against some of the more underrated coaches in college football, Mike Gundy, Kyle Whittingham, um, all these coaches, Colin Klein
Even the
or
coach for
Chris
Kansas,
Klieman,
right? Kansas has been competitive
Lance
lately.
Leopold. Like these are coaches that probably would replace Billy Napier next year, So
Yeah, yeah.
I don't see him getting fired during the season, but like you, I see this dude getting fired once the season ends. I don't care what the buyout is. You know, these schools
Yeah.
got money.
Now what about with
They damn
Sam
near paid
Pittman?
Jaden Rashada all that money. The
Yeah.
recruit, yeah,
Yeah.
like you finna
So
get
what
him
you think
10
about
million.
Sam Pittman? I know he's on a hot seat this year, but the only thing I know about him is because people talk about on NCAA football as a number 10 quarterback that can throw the ball. That's a freshman. And they actually did just troll Colorado yesterday because Colorado edited it to where it was an incomplete pass, but they made like it was a catch. And then Arkansas did the whole entire play of theirs and said all darts. And it was
You
the
want to know
same
something
play.
funny about that? They're trolling because Coach Prime might be going to Fayetteville, Arkansas after this year.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't know this, but it's been reported and it's been confirmed. Arkansas's athletic director, who's there right now, he gave Deion Sanders his first ever head coaching interview before he ever took the job at Jackson State. Jerry Jones, who used to play at Arkansas, he's an alumni
Right.
there. He donates a lot of money to that program. He's the one who pulled a few strings to get Deion that interview. And Deion did so well that the AD was close to hiring him. It's just the inexperience, him never being a head coach at all in the SEC just wouldn't have been a good look.
No,
So
it
that's
would
why he
not.
went with Sam Pittman. But there's a really good chance that he goes to Arkansas. Jerry Jones is a really likable guy,
I like that
despite.
you said that because Jerry Jones, if you remember, Jerry Jones was also teammates with Jimmy Johnson. That's how Jimmy
Mhm.
Johnson went to the Cowboys.
So it's like Jerry has a lot of pools. So it's like
And
if
let's make
he,
it reach. I've seen Dion and Jerry Jones in the booth at a Cowboys game.
yeah,
Could we be possibly talking about if Cowboys don't do good? And let's say Dak Prescott doesn't get signed back. Are we talking
Shadur Sanders.
prime time and Shador
No,
there?
no, 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 no. We'll definitely see Shadur. We'll see perfect timing there, but I don't think Deion Sanders would. He already has said he has no interest coaching the NFL because coaching NFL players is different from coaching college
It
football
is.
players. You know, it's more ego involved with the NFL players than there is college. You can be more of a father figure to your college players
Right.
than the NFL.
Absolutely.
And plus, he already knows that working under Jerry as a head coach, you know, it's kind of hard because Jerry Jones is somebody who wants to manipulate you kind of like a puppet. But Arkansas would be a good fit for him because he want to be working under Jerry. It's just that Jerry is pulling a lot of strings. He's providing the NIL backing for Dion. And if Jerry Jones is backing you, everybody else is going to back you as well. Sam Pittman, I think he just had that one good season when they beat Texas A&M. They were crying. You know, they went 9-4. It was a great. It was. You know, it was a, every. It's
That
a.
was the pandemic season, was it?
I actually believe that it was,
Because it
or it
was
could have
that
been
they still
after
played at
that. It could have been
18T
after
though.
that. I think it was 2021. Yeah, it
Oh,
was 2021.
okay.
So 2021, they beat Texas A&M. You know, they had that big 9-win season, and then it just all fell apart from there because they lost Kendall Bryles, their offensive coordinator, who went to TCU to replace the dude who is now at Clemson, Garrett Riley.
Right.
So when they lost Kendall Bryles, they ended up hiring Dan Enos to replace him, and he was a bad offensive coordinator just from the 1 year he spent at Miami, and that's what ruined everything. They also had some injuries. KJ Jefferson got banged up. The defense wasn't that good, and that's why Sam Pittman's in the position that he's in now. So I could see him actually getting fired before the season ends because they brought in Bobby Petrino. Now, Bobby Petrino, you remember him. I get what you're saying, but here's how you got to look at it. Bobby
Tired of that man, bro. Like I'm so tired of Bobby Petrino. Like Bobby Petrino, like, oh
Just
God.
take your old
This is
ass.
the same guy who quit on Atlanta when Michael Vick got locked up, right?
Yeah, but
Oh
when he left
man, like I'm so
Atlanta,
tired of this
when
guy.
he left to Atlanta and went to Arkansas, they had their best years under him.
They did.
So he's like their saving grace. So that's why Sam Pittman has a really small leash because they know that if they fire him, Bart Petrino can take over, and that most likely is who's going to be their next head coach, unless they decide to take the dice roll and get Coach Prime because they got the money to get Prime if they want to get him. The question is he really dedicated to building at Colorado? or is he going to chase the money, go to Arkansas with way more resource and whatnot? Because what a lot of people don't know about Arkansas is that they're top 20 in FBS history and all-time wins. You feel me? They may not be a national championship contender, but they definitely are one of the better historical programs that we have in this sport. And they got Coach John Calipari. So they got money.
Yeah, hey, no, wait. When he left and went to Kentucky, I'm like, somebody definitely did an inside job for that one. That was crazy. Like,
because they got, believe it or not, Arkansas has way more money than what you may think, especially when you got Jerry Jones, who, you know, he's throwing in money and stuff.
And their
so
basketball team wasn't bad before they got Calipari either. So
it wasn't. So they
yeah.
can pay. So, like, you get the right coach in there and you can get, you know, the donors, alumni to believe in them.
Oh, yeah.
That's
why
got
everybody clowns Oregon. Everybody say,
Mm-hmm.
Oregon got 7 to 8 different uniforms, don't win a national championship. Well, I'm going to give you a name, Phil Knight. He runs NIL over here. He is Oregon. You know, Nike is Phil Knight. So it's not hard to say, hey, you want to come here? And on top of that, we give you your own cleat. We can get you ready for the new, you know, so when you go over to the NFL, because look what Dante Moore. I thought, I mean, he originally was supposed to go to Oregon. And now you go to Oregon. So, you know, it's NIL is changing the game now. And
Arkansas got a lot of it.
Nick Saban retired. He admitted it. Like,
and
I almost feel like that's almost the same for Dabo Swinney. Like, it's
I think he might retire after this season. I really, or either he may leave for Florida.
Ooh, Dabo leave to Florida? That's, you know what? I never thought of that, but I think that will be a good move though, because you done everything you could for Clemson. Like, I don't know how far back you remember Clemson. I remember Clemson when their best player was Gaines Adams. They had who was that quarterback back then? I think it was like Chad Kelly, which is Jim Kelly's nephew. Yeah. They had a receiver named Chancey Stuckey. This is like, that's what I'm saying, bro. Like, James Rodgers was their running
goes
back.
Back as far as Taj Boyd.
Yeah. See, that's like the newer, that's when they kind of start to get good. But like, I mean, for what he's done, I wouldn't mind that. And with Deion going to Arkansas, I think like the thing that has to change, people forget, these sponsors do sometimes are relevant. Now that he's back with Nike, with Colorado, you see all the Diamond Turf shoes, all the old Deion shoes. You got to have some effect.
That's why he's able to get some of these. He doesn't recruit at the level I thought he would, but I think some of that is partially due to, you know, it is kind of hard to recruit at Colorado, but at the same time, people keep saying he's not recruiting good, but, you know, he got Travis Hunter, he got Jordan Seaton. It's like, if he wants somebody and he goes all in on them, he'll get them, because Deion is your program. You know, when you hire Deion, he's your program. So for Arkansas, if they don't go the Coach Prime direction, they're going back to Bobby Petrino. I don't think that would be a good decision.
So what's going to happen then? He's going to have another side chick on his motorcycle and fall with him? Because I remember that's why he resigned last time, because he was cheating on his wife, because he got caught in that accident.
Man, he
like,
might be
like the guy, to me, I just don't respect it too. And then like, I don't respect when like I'm coaching you with the Falcons and then I just leave mid-season. And it's not like he left after the season. He left in the middle of the season.
This is why Bobby Petrino isn't viewed as badly in my eyes as everybody else, because he helped to give us one of the greatest quarterbacks that we've ever seen in NFL history, the young legend out of Pompano. You feel me? He did recruit Lamar. He did develop him. Lamar does give him a lot of props, and he always talks about Lamar in a very high regard.
But I want to backtrack that, though. You're talking about Louisville. He was, before he even went to the Falcons, he was with Louisville when they were in the Big East. And Louisville had, let me see, who were some of their quarterbacks? Stan LaFleur. I think that was Jake Delhomme's cousin. Brian Brown. You see how old I feel? Brian Brown.
You want to know something crazy? That's the head coach of Louisville now.
You get what I'm saying? I really sat there and watched some of these guys become coaches, bro. Like, that's how you know I'm kind of up there in age. Michael Bush was their best running back at the time. So, you know, I get it, because he had it where Ryan Brown wasn't a running quarterback. He was a pocket passer.
And now
So I
Arkansas,
get
you
what you're
remember
saying.
Ryan
They're
Mallett?
having Lamar Jackson.
You remember Ryan Mallett, RIP?
Yes, Ryan Mallett of Michigan. Yeah. So, and the reason why he transferred was because, like I said, Rich Rod system, he can't run. He couldn't run. I mean, Ryan Mallett couldn't run, but when he went to Arkansas,
He
stayed in
was
the pocket and sling the ball. I
slinging
mean,
that, slinging that rock all over
and
the field.
that's picky. I'm a picky bank back to Rich Rod era. I gotta give him props for getting Denard Robinson. I didn't think that guy would have been good because I remember we had his first recruiting class was actually a top 10 recruiting class. But when you're in Michigan, you're always gonna have a top 10 recruiting class because the name speaks for itself. You're at least top 20 every year. He had a quarterback named Tate Forcier and Denard Robinson. Denard Robinson was an athlete. Tate Forcier was a 4-star quarterback. And Tate Forcier, I say that first year, he could throw the ball, he could run, he was a little bit of everything. And then like towards the end of the year, I think he got like academic ineligible. So he got kicked off the team. And that's when Denard Robinson came in and ended up being the guy. And I think he went to Montana. And then I think he got hit with a DUI or something over there. And then that was kind of it for his career. And I'm class of 2012 in high school. I played against a quarterback by the name of Devin Gardner, and he was on Michigan.
Oh, Mr. Number 98.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
I
So
used to
I
hate
remember
watching him
watching
play.
him. It was a playoff game. Yeah, I was riding the pine because I was a sophomore. I was riding the pine, and it was a play where it was like fourth and 13. They intentionally ran out the clock to make it fourth and like something else. I don't know, top of my head. And I told somebody, I'm like, he's about to score a touchdown. Everybody thought I was talking shit. This guy literally snapped the ball off the shotgun, looked, and just lobs it up. And you can see the tight spiral. And like their receivers can see he went to Inkster High. So like their receivers were like 6'3", 6'4". Bro, we're playing against people like us is like 5'9", 5'8", 5'7" corners, bro. Like, my high school, like by the time we went to 2011, we won districts for the first time in our history. And then we get blew out against St. Mary's, which y'all know you don't know who St. Mary's is, but the receiver was Allen Robinson. So yeah, I've seen a lot of players just from right on the sideline watching them like shit. So it's crazy how the game goes around. We play him senior year. We played against James Ross, who goes to Michigan. I mean, like, we played against one of my years in high school, we played against Dennis Norfleet, who went to Michigan. So we played against guys who went to Division One, even though we weren't known as a top tier football school, but we were known to beat some teams my years in high school, we went to playoffs every year. Which I can say that's an accomplishment because before that, my high school was not going to anywhere. They were 2-8. I mean, freshman teams didn't win a game. I'd be like, we kind of helped change that. But yeah, man, it's crazy when you get to see the loophole with some of these college players and then some of these
Shit,
NFL
I played
players.
against Carson Beck.
Carson Beck.
I wasn't playing defense. I was a wide receiver, but we was up like 21-0 after the first quarter. And after that, oh my goodness, that
Carson Beck's
we
from
won.
Florida.
Yeah, he's from Jacksonville.
Oh,
He played
okay,
for
okay.
so he started out at some all white private school named Episcopal or something like that. Then he transferred to Mandarin and he got every single wide receiver he played with is D1 right now. And we won that game, but our defensive coordinator was not happy. I mean, this dude probably after the first quarter had about 400 yards passing, probably 21 to 25. Like, I've never seen an NFL quarterback at a high school level. That's my first time ever watching it. Like, you can tell when you're going up against a future NFL quarterback because, with in high school, a lot of guys aren't even completing over 40% of their passes.
No.
They throw the ball,
Yeah.
it's
And
touching the
some
turf.
high schools, like for me, we weren't really throwing the ball like that either. So
Yeah, but him, oh my goodness. And this what we had a 5-star cornerback, by the way, who plays for Arkansas, Jaheim Singletary. He was at one point the number one cornerback in the nation. And he started out at Georgia. He's at Arkansas now. It was tough. Like
wait, you
Carson Beck
said
is
Carson Beck went to a private. Was it the same private school as Tim Tebow? Because I know Tim Tebow's out of
nah.
Jacksonville, right?
So Tim Tebow went to a high school in St. Augustine called Nice.
Okay.
And ever since he left, they've never been relevant since.
Yeah,
Now,
that's perfect
Carson,
because I remember watching the Hoover TV show, and they gotta play this guy named Tim Tebow, and this is before you even know what Tim
yeah,
Tebow was, and you're like, oh
but
shit.
he's a legend though. And then you got Derrick Henry. He played for Yulee, but that was more like a school in the country.
Right.
But Carson Beck, when he was at Mandarin, like he was really one of those ones. That's why I was telling a lot of people last year he was going to be good because you know how it is when teams are starting a new quarterback in college. People are like he hasn't played on the road in an environment like man. I
Yeah, this is
seen
the
this
first
dude.
quarterback we can say from Georgia since Stafford. That's like, I mean, they're talking first overall pick. And that's the
Now
last guy we seen as a first overall pick was Matthew Stafford.
yeah, he's that good. And you know, I really believe that when you look at Georgia this year, I have them making it to the national championship, losing to Ohio State, but I don't have them winning
Oh,
the
you said the
SEC.
team. I ain't want to hear
Oh yeah,
that.
I forgot about that.
I ain't want to hear Ohio State,
My
man.
fault.
But I understand it though, because this year for them,
They paid
it's
20
no
million for
excuse
this
to not beat
team.
Michigan. It's
Yeah.
really no excuse this time. Oh, I feel like Ryan Day brought the Avengers over. You got Chip Kelly, which if I'm Chip, I would have never left LA at all. But you
Well,
left LA to go be the offensive coordinator.
you see UCLA, they were in a losing situation when it came to Chip Kelly because Chip Kelly was already like Nick Saban irritated with NIL. As a matter of fact, he spoke out about it on Pat McAfee, and that was a large reason why he left. The Dante Moore thing didn't work out. It's like, okay, like I don't like
It's
NIL. I
crazy because
use
I
it.
thought Dante Moore was actually kind of good. He's a freshman, true freshman. You got to let him play, deal with the bumps. The game against Utah, I understand it, but Utah is tough playing at Utah. Utah defense is good. It's understandable, but a lot of those games was close. You
But
know,
it's kind of hard when you got a great defense and you're just like, we can get better QB play. We could be better. And, you know, he probably shouldn't have started Dante Moore that early. But, you know, he actually took the jump using NIL to get this dude because that's probably the only person from that recruiting class they paid. And he had so much success with DTR, you probably thought you could recapture that with Dante
yeah,
Moore. And he did look good their first two games. He looked, I remember they played San Diego State early. He was impressive.
yeah. But they
And
played
he had
Coastal
another game.
Carolina because
Yeah.
they ran a two quarterback system that game.
Yeah.
Because
And
I
then,
actually bet that game because I did Coastal Carolina plus 15 and a half because I was a big Grayson McCall fan. So,
mm-hmm.
you
And he's
know,
at NC State. And that's another
Grayson McCall's at
team.
NC State.
Yeah.
Oh shit. I didn't even know that. I'm glad you told me that.
And
So
NC State, they play Tennessee week 2 this year.
is
That
that
could
the
be a
game?
pop.
I think that's supposed to be in Charlotte, right? I think that game is
Yeah.
supposed to
That
be
could be a
there.
possible upset.
You know, it's possible, man, because I just be trying to figure out where all these players go because so much changes. And like I said, I keep feeling more older by the day because now Deshaun Foster's the head coach. And last time I remember seeing Deshaun Foster, he scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots when I was 10 years old. See, so when you say you start watching football at 10 years old, I was watching it ever since I seen the greatest running back in my life, Barry Sanders. So I was watching football ever since I was a little kid, man. When we had to drive out to Pontiac, Michigan, not Detroit. Pontiac is about maybe 30, 45 minutes away. But Pontiac Silverdome, if you ever know about the WrestleMania when, Hulk Hogan drops on Andre 3000, Andre the Giant, that's the Pontiac Silverdome. So I remember seeing Barry Sanders just shifty and just seeing him in person was just that was just something that like I haven't had that special treatment ever since that time, man. Like that guy was so amazing to me. So like I said, I can go back to 90s football and tell you what I need to know. I can tell you when Tampa Bay was in the NFC Central. The NFC Central was the Lions, the Vikings. So if you ever see why a lot of times they played against those teams, the Packers, it's because they were in that division.
What was your thoughts when they had realigned the divisions? Why did they realign the divisions?
I think because of Houston coming in as an expansion team. But I don't even think well, I know you don't know this, but you probably seen like clips of it. The Tennessee Titans used to be the Tennessee Oilers because they moved from Houston.
Yeah.
So if you ever see Steve McNair when he had the old school jersey with the hat,
Yeah.
that's when they was still the Tennessee Oilers. A couple
And one
years
move.
later, they changed the name. Of course, just short from the Super Bowl win, right? So, I think that happened with Houston because Houston came in as a Texan. So it moved Seattle from the AFC to the NFC.
Mm.
Yeah. If you ever seen old clips of Bo Jackson running through Brian Bosworth, that's AFC Seahawks. That's not NFC Seahawks at all. So but I actually don't mind the alignment now. I mean, it's understandable. Like NFC South teams is NFC South teams, but like that time was so out of place. Like you had the Saints, the Panthers. Who else do you have? You had the San Francisco 49ers and the Rams in the NFC West. So yeah, the Carolina Panthers, when they came into existence, they were in the NFC West. If you ever wonder why Archie Manning couldn't win shit with the Saints, because he was in the NFC West. So it starts to understand why. So imagine when Bill Walsh took over the NFC West, nobody was winning. You know. So yeah, I'm 30, man. And trust me, when I tell you I can watch. I mean, I remember seeing The Greatest Show on Turf. I didn't see all of Jerry Rice. Now, the Joe Montana era, that's different, but Jerry Rice did play 20 years in the league. So I saw a nice
You
amount
want
of
to know
Jerry
what's
Rice.
crazy? Like, I'm getting so old to the point it's like guys
Bro, you're
that grew,
22, bro. Stop. You're
but
not
it's
old.
still like Tom Brady is about to be commentating games, dog. Like,
Yeah. Now that's crazy for me to say. Yes, because I watched him at Michigan. So yeah, it's more crazier for me because I watched him when he played against Alabama in that comeback and they went in overtime.
but the Miko Ryans, though, I remember when he was still playing for the Philadelphia. Now he's a head
You said
coach.
Philadelphia, bro. He played for Houston Texans first,
But
bro.
he ended up ending his career. Well, that's when I remember seeing
And
him
the
play.
crazy part is, let me backtrack on that. The first pick they had that year was Mario Williams. They drafted D'Amico in the second round, the first pick, and D'Amico won Defensive Player of the Year. Rookie Defensive Player of the Year. So
Alabama.
that tells you, right, how he did better than Mario Williams, who was the number one overall pick. When everyone that draft was crazy because you had Reggie Bush. Jesus, this is what I'm saying. That was the best era of football ever, bro. Watching that 05 like championship game with Texas and USC. I know everyone talks about it, but you got to literally sit there and watch that. Man, listen, like who else was in that draft? Matt Leinart was in that draft. Matt Leinart lost his opportunity when they lost that Monday. I remember they lost the Monday night game. Oh, well, you know about this one. When they lost against the Bears and they was up. You ever hear that quote from Dennis Green? We are who they thought they were. We let them off the hook. That was against the
Yeah.
Bears. That was when
And
he was
everybody
coaching
was
the
surprised
Cardinals.
Matt Leinart didn't work out because he was in the best situation you could have been at that time for a rookie QB. You're throwing it. What? They had Larry Fitz, Anquan
Yes.
Bolden.
Yes. And the
Like, how
crazy
could you be
thing is, though,
bad?
his backup was Kurt Warner.
Oh yeah, then
Yes, this
Kurt
is when
Warner
Kurt
came
Warner
in
was Kurt Warner
because
once he
Kurt
left
Warner
the
had went
Rams.
from the Rams to the Giants, and
Yeah,
then
because if
like
you remember, his wife was complaining to like the GM, like, why is he playing? But he was cheap. He was under Eli, and then he goes to Arizona, and Matt Leinart wasn't working out. It was to a point where they were working out on a two quarterback system, and it wasn't working. And then when Ken Whisenhunt came in, obviously we saw what happened. They go to the Super Bowl, and it's so crazy with that Super Bowl against your Steelers. Hey, listen, I'm not going to front, bro. When Fitzgerald caught that ball, I thought it was over. Because, hey, listen, Larry Fitzgerald was one of my favorite receivers ever, man. I remember watching from his Pittsburgh Panthers days. Just an amazing talent, man. So, like, watching the evolution of football, I don't really like that I don't like that you can't hit the shot nobody no more. And now everything's a penalty. I don't really like that. It's this soft shit. You can't hit the quarterback. Like you hit Mahomes, that's an automatic flag. We seen Lions fans. See, I'm not a Lions fan. I'm a Packers fan. So I'm shocked that you even said the Packers will win the Super Bowl this year. But when it comes to like the Lions, people forget that when Aaron Rodgers got that bullshit penalty, and Aaron Rodgers threw the
yeah.
ball up out of nowhere. I was at that game. Oh shit. Oh shit. I was going nuts, bro. It's just that game, man. And even with that, what class was that? 2000. See, bro, I'm so old. I can remember classes. See how I'll give you drive classes that I can remember. The drive class with Aaron Rodgers, Alex Smith, who else you had? Ronnie Brown. Ronnie Brown, Cadillac Williams were the first two Auburn running backs to go in the top 5 ever. Cadillac Williams, he was good with Tampa Bay until he tore his ACL because he won Rookie of the Year that year. He tore his ACL 2 years in a row. That's when John Gruden was coaching Tampa. Then he was done. You had Braylon Edwards from Michigan. He was pretty productive. I mean, more of his Jets days. He got into that situation with LeBron's best friend in Cleveland, and they got rid of him real quickly.
What happened?
Pretty much some drunk shit. It's a long.
Okay.
So like I talk to Braylon Edwards every here and there. Like I actually do talk to him, but he doesn't want to talk about that shit. So I'm not gonna force him to talk about this shit, bro. But like, I'm glad that this is coming back with the playoffs because the one thing about it is that I think it's going to work because this is what I'm saying about how I feel so old. Division II had playoffs ever since 2006. Like they had 12-team playoffs in Division II. So, and App State when I was living in North Carolina, App State was the team. So when they played Michigan, I told people App State may beat Michigan, and everyone thought I was crazy. Then look what the hell happened.
I think the problem with the 12-team college football playoffs is that you got auto bids, which are cool. The problem is that unlike the other models, you don't have a committee of people that pick the teams. You know, it's pretty much similar to the NFL. Like you got your at-large, you got your auto bids, teams that win their conference get home field, and then it goes by record. But with a committee, though, they hand select teams, and when you got people making decisions, you get a lot of inconsistency. And the only thing that has kept college football from being dominated by the SEC has been the 14 model because last year was the first time in over a decade we got a SEC list national champion.
Yeah, that was.
But now with the college football playoffs expanding to 12 teams, Georgia gets in with one loss. You feel me? And Georgia probably wins it all. And
so there's 12 teams, right?
Yeah, so you're going to have your 4 auto bids that go to the P4
second round automatically, right?
Yeah, then you're going to have the highest rated group of 5 school that gets in.
Okay, so I think that matches would be like
bid.
a 5-12, 6-11,
yeah,
10-7, like that, right? Kind of like NCAA.
Now,
right?
the teams that get auto bids, though, they get a first round bye. Now, the other teams, though, you know, who don't end up getting a high seed, they get a home field playoff game. Now, the problem with this is that nobody's going to be happy with it because there's always going to be a team that gets snubbed. Because I want you to think about this, right? You got 12 spots. 5 of those go to auto bids. Now, what are you going to do with the other 9 spots, right? You know that you're going to have about 3 or 4 SEC teams that get in because the SEC, here's where my biggest problem lies, right? I got Alabama going 11-1, losing to Texas in the SEC championship. Texas goes 10-2. I also have Georgia going 10-2. You know Alabama's getting in.
So
you know
wait, so you think Texas beats Georgia?
Well, yeah, I think that Georgia ends up suffering 2 of their losses on the road just because they play 3 of the SEC. Because Georgia is favored to win the SEC, right? But the other 3 teams behind them are Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss. They play all 3 of those.
No one's been talking about Ole Miss this whole time. I think that's more scary.
And they play.
We know Jackson Dart is going to throw the ball. Lane Kiffin, he makes great like play calls. It's just the defense, bro. Like when the defense gives up, like I remember they were like plus 22 against Georgia. I'm like, they at least keep the game close. And then when Georgia started running up the score on them, Ole Miss had nothing. They couldn't figure out what to do.
But here's the thing about Ole Miss, though. Let's say Ole Miss goes 9-3. They're not going to be the SEC is probably going to have 4 teams that go 9-3. So if Alabama's in at 11-1, Texas and Georgia in at 10-2, how many 9-3 teams are you going to put in? And what's going to be the criteria for why you select those 9-3 teams over the other 9-3 teams. So let's say Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Missouri, all four of those squads are 9-3. You can't put all of those teams in because you still have to pick from the other at-large teams, because you could have a couple of teams in the Big Ten that have the same record. You know that either Ohio State and Michigan are going to get the auto bid, and whoever doesn't is going to end up getting, seeding there. So the Big Ten and the SEC are going to occupy the majority of the spots. And then, the at-large bids who they're going to pick on, where the controversy is going to be is the inconsistency and picking one team over the other, even though they have the same record. So why would you pick a 9-3 Oklahoma over a 9-3 Tennessee? Are you going to go off strength of record, strength of schedule?
That's probably what you would have to do.
Last year, they didn't go off that. They went off the eye test, because remember, they was like, from what we see when we watch these games, so-and-so team is, the best team in America. Yeah. So with you expanding to 12 teams and there still are going to be more snubs, more people are going to say, we need to expand. And remind you, we're not stuck at 12 teams. After 2 years, we're going to 14. It will never be enough, because you're always going to have teams that deserve to get in. If you put in a 9-3 Tennessee over a 9-3 USC, people are going to be outraged by that. You feel me?
Because USC is going to have a way better strength of schedule.
So you're going to always have the people out there who are going to say, this isn't enough. We need to expand more. And eventually, we might get to a point where we just go full out Mike Leach and we just say, after regular season, 64-team college football playoff, baby, FBS style.
I don't know about 64, man. Maybe like 32, something like that. But I agree, because this is what money rules the world, bro. Which is why we don't have, which I also realize why the play clock is the way it is now, where like it doesn't stop at first downs no more than 2 minutes. Because they try to cut commercials. The reason why they got expanded to 12 teams was because all the sponsors, right? Think about it. You may be playing at the Rose Bowl. You might be playing at the Sugar Bowl. You might be playing at this spot, and it's sponsored by somebody big.
Plus, they think expanding. Another reason for why people want expansion is because they want more teams that don't get a chance that have opportunity. But what they fail to realize is that all you did was make it more easier for the teams that have continued to dominate the sport, because everybody thinks every year we have a Boise State from 2011, which isn't true.
You want to feel old? Kind of feel old one more time? Kind of feel old one more time? You said 2011 Boise State. You know who that quarterback was, right?
Kellen Moore. And that's the guy I was looking for to show. Yes. I remember watching him play when they upset Virginia Tech.
And it was at the
Blacksburg.
Redskins. The Redskins, well, I still call them the Redskins, but it was at their field. So, like Boise State, you're right. They have always been consistent. I remember the Statue of Liberty play when they played against Oklahoma and Adrian Peterson. Then the next year on NCAA football 08, yes, I'm bringing it back to the old school days. They have a Statue of Liberty play, which that's why I don't play the new game, bro. The new college football game is so terrible.
Yeah, it's kind of whack. But imagine everybody thinks that you can get a 2020 Cincinnati. That's the best G5 school in college football history.
You're right.
Because they had 8-9 guys off that team that went to the NFL, and they didn't get blown out by Alabama like how people thought. Like
Cincinnati, first half, I think they were only down by 3 points. They gave Bryce Young a run for his money. Bryce Young was accurate.
Yeah, like they had Sauce Gardner, Kobe Bryant.
Because Sauce Gardner locked up Jameson Williams. Williams wasn't doing all of that stuff like he normally was doing. Even against Georgia before he tore his ACL, he wasn't doing that on Sauce Gardner.
But you know how you get to that point? You recruit guys, you develop them, and once they get to their junior, senior year, they're at, their full potential. But now you won't find 2 more Cincinnati, Boise States anymore, because anytime you have a high-level player at a G5, guess where they're going? Transfer portal, getting more money. The second thing is that NIL has done nothing but further expose the gap between the G4 and the Power 5. So you don't have resources. You don't have the financial backing. You're never going to have a team remotely close enough to give, one of the Big Ten SEC schools a run for their money. Now, if you get ACC versus a Group of 4 team or a G5 team, those could be closer. But here's the thing, though. Let's say FSU, who doesn't have a tough schedule this year, they go 10-2, right? The situation that the 12-team playoff is going to create is going to be way more outrageous than what we saw last year with FSU getting left out despite being an undefeated Power 5 champion over Alabama. You
I
want to know
thought
why?
Georgia should have made it still.
But
with
this
the
is what's going to
loss.
make it more outrageous. 11-1 team might get passed over for a 9-3 SEC team because of the strength of schedule.
Yeah.
And the thing with the SEC is that the reason why I never cared about the SEC scheduling weak teams out of conference is that it's always been so stacked in terms of depth. You always have great teams in the SEC. So with how deep the SEC always is, there's no reason if you're Alabama to schedule an out-of-conference game with a Michigan or FSU because you don't need to, because the SEC is already stacked with great teams.
Yeah, that's
so why
more for
risk?
like the opposing team. Like
Exactly.
Michigan, they need Texas because I think, like I said, I think it makes them see how their team is going to be.
Mm-hmm. And
And
their
I'm
conference
not
ain't
saying
as deep.
Texas will lose, but your defense, you lost your 2 best All-American defensive tackles. Michigan still can run the rock. That's just what I'm going to wonder. It's just their defense is still intact. A couple players left, but I mean, that's a tough game for Texas. That's why, I know I see them around 10.5 wins. I think 10-2 is really realistic, but I
how
think they
would
play
you?
South Carolina this year, do they?
Who?
Texas.
No, they don't. I
Oh,
don't think
see,
so.
so they don't even play half the teams that I think, because I think South Carolina could be a team that can actually make some noise too. I'm not saying they go crazy, but I mean, at
I got
least
them
win
going
8
7.
games.
But how would you feel if FSU, who went 10-2 or 11-1 this year, got left out again for a 9-3 Tennessee or a 9-3 Oklahoma or a 9-3 Ole Miss? How would that make you feel?
I don't know. I never thought of it that way because I think it depends on the ACC this year. If Clemson at least in the top 25, Miami's the top 25. When you beat those teams, are they in the top 25? The one thing I always said, and I piggyback about how bad Michigan was. As much as Ohio State was dominating Michigan, Ohio State needed Michigan to be good again because it took them until that controversy play when it was a 4th and 1 and they stopped them. That year when Chris Samuel scored a game with a touchdown and they made him play Clemson in the playoffs. But, you need teams like that can match up. I'm not saying they have to be top 10 teams, but if,
You want to know what
Florida
else?
State beats Clemson, if they beat Miami and they're both top 25 teams and they lose to, well, I don't know who they would lose to, but, you got to consider that.
You know
Because
how
if
else?
Tennessee loses to North Carolina State, like you're saying, now that's a
But what
bad
if they
loss,
beat
unless
Georgia
North
at
Carolina
home?
State's top 20.
But what if they beat Georgia at home late in the season? What if they got a quality win against Ole Miss? It's
Yeah,
like
but
they got
that makes
a
sense
worse
though.
record, but they got a stronger strength of wins. And here's something else: the 12-team college football playoffs, what it's going to do is going to minimize the importance of rivalry games. What makes the game such the spectacle that it is because of the stakes that have come with it. Either you win and you get to the Big Ten championship, or you lose and now your playoff fate's in the hands of the committee. But now with it being 12 teams, that game doesn't have that same level of importance because Ohio State, Michigan, they could drop that game, rematch in the Big Ten championship, and then potentially rematch again in the college football playoffs. Now, you may say off the bat, seeing the game 3 times in the season is great. But then once we start getting used to seeing these same rivalry games that we only saw played once, being played twice and 3 times in a year, they don't have the same level of intensity because the stakes aren't as high anymore. Ryan Day could lose to Michigan again and win a national championship, and it has no implications. The reason why Ryan Day gets the criticism that he receives is because Ohio State can't get past Michigan, and that's been the reason why they missed out on the playoffs. But now, when you
Well, they missed
play,
it once, right? Because other than that, they made it that one year when.
but they don't get to the Big Ten championship, though.
Right, right.
So now with the playoffs, you see the same games being played 3 times. What's the point of really trying to magnify it during the regular season? It loses its luster because the more you get of a product, the less in demand it becomes. So what the college football playoff does, in a sense, it has put more of an importance on winning your conference championship, but at the same time, it has lessened the importance of the regular season because now, if you're in the SEC or the Big Ten, even if you have 3 losses, as long as you beat some really good teams throughout that stretch, because there aren't going to be any undefeated teams anymore.
Like Penn
We
State.
might have a few if you're really that good, but with how oversaturated the SEC is, like even Georgia fans, I was talking to them on Spaces the other night. I was like, be honest, bro. Like, there's no chance anybody ever again is going to go undefeated unless you really just have a completely stacked team. Because, like, you're going to have years when you're Georgia, you're the best team in college football, but despite how good you are, going on the road against 3 of the highest odds teams to win the conference outside of you, there's definitely room for you to lose at least 1 or 2 of those road games because majority of those upsets occur when you're on the road. Remember Bryce Young's final season when they lost 2 games? All those 2 losses occurred on the road against Tennessee, last minute, on the road, last minute loss to LSU. So now, with how conference realignment, you asked me earlier, how has that impacted college football? There's not going to be any more undefeated teams, and you get more Missouri stories where they wouldn't have been able to win as many games as what they did in the past with the traditional SEC scheduling, because with it rotating every year, you may be like Ole Miss and not have any tough road games.
Because Missouri definitely since they've been into the SEC, they have been garbage.
Same thing
Into
with
the last
Auburn.
few years. Recruiting too. What they got, that 5-star dude, Bolden. Bolden's looking like a first-round pick. And I do think he was the spark that make this team better. So sometimes players that do come into your program do help out. But I mean, the last time I remember Missouri being good, like I said, I don't have another old moment, but you can go back to when they had Chase Daniels, Jeremy Maclin as the ones who punch. So
they had Shane
Ray.
And
Big 12 Missouri wasn't a slouch. I mean, they lost to Texas and Oklahoma, but those games weren't easy. So I definitely
people
understand.
forgot year 2 when Missouri was in the SEC. They went to the SEC championship. They lost to Auburn. They had Michael Sam.
Yeah, and Michael Sam would have got a bag, but he didn't come out. Let's just be honest. Because so it's like, you don't be a co-defensive player of the year with the first overall pick for no reason. Because first overall pick was Davion Clowney.
So it's like, think about the schools like Florida now with conference realignment. For Florida, there's going to be some teams that have just as difficult as a schedule as what they're going to have. And you're going to have to be able to overcome that. So if Georgia had the same schedule Florida had this year, yeah, we know they will win 10 games, but, they will also have some losses throughout that. So it's just, a lot of things are about to change.
Yeah, I think there's no East and West division no more either, right?
Yeah, there's no more division.
So it's just the top 2 teams who make the
exactly. So, and everybody just rotates a different schedule. So one year you may have 5 road games against some of the best teams in the SEC, and other years you could get the break that Ole Miss has, where their toughest game of the year is at home against Georgia. They don't have no tough road games because their road games are against.
So they don't play Alabama this year?
I don't think they played them on the road. I don't think they have no tough road games this year. Like, the best team they play is
Georgia. They have to play Alabama this year, right?
No, because since they got rid of the divisions, not all of the rivalries. So
Yeah,
the
because they used
reason
to always be in the West, and they always played every
exactly.
year.
So now with you getting rid of divisions, you're not locked in to always have to play Alabama and LSU anymore. It rotates. So you'll play a different slate of teams every
I
year.
gotta look this up. Let me see. And you know what? Speaking of it, I wouldn't mind their win total this year as far as Ole Miss. I mean,
Yeah, Ole Miss, their
bro,
toughest
the
road.
first 4 weeks should be easy wins, right? They play Foreman, they
Yeah,
play
Middle
Middle
Tennessee,
Tennessee.
Wake Forest, Georgia Southern.
They should win that. Now Kentucky would be the tough one. But
Yeah, and
let me see.
now you do get LSU on the road. That could be a tough game, but
Yeah.
outside of that, they got no tough
Wow, they don't play
road
out.
games.
This is the first time I ever see them not play Alabama.
You see, now
That's
the thing,
crazy.
now the thing that has made it so difficult, I don't think the parity is going to come from the college football playoffs. The parity comes from the benefits of conference realignment. You
Yeah.
get rid of divisions. You do still have your protected rivalry, so you're still going to play against your rivals every year. So Auburn can't duck Georgia and Alabama. You're still
Alabama.
going to play
But the thing
them.
they did change it was, I mean, I don't know if you remember this with Big 12, but they brought back the Texas A&M Texas rivalry.
Mm-hmm. And they
But they
didn't want
got rid
Texas
of
in
it with
the SEC.
LSU. So, but it's crazy. This is the first time that I've seen Ole Miss not play Alabama. Like
So
that's
that
to me really shocking.
and this is the reason why teams like Ole Miss who couldn't be able to get over the hump in the past can get over it now because if you have a favorable schedule where you avoid some of the best teams and you get to host Georgia at home, that increases your chances of being the first team in program history under Lane Kiffin to win the SEC conference. Now, unfortunately, you could be put in a situation like Florida, where, unlike Ole Miss, you benefited from having the easy schedule this year, but Florida's going on the road playing Texas,
Yeah.
Alabama,
Yeah. And that's
potentially.
all
You feel
after
me?
they played Georgia at Jacksonville, right?
Mm-hmm.
The back end of
So,
the season, bro. That's why I don't know if they make it.
and next year, the roles could reverse. Next year, Florida could have a new coach, have an easy schedule, and win the conference because of that, because they had a lot of their toughest games at home. Meanwhile, Ole Miss could drop off, make it
Right.
to the playoffs this year, go 8-4 next year because they lose so much, and they got a way difficult schedule. Now, instead of having Georgia being your toughest game at home, LSU being your toughest road game, you may have 4 road games where you're going on the road against Alabama, Georgia, Texas. You feel me? So
Ooh.
it's all about.
I'm getting, bro, that's even making me hot thinking of that. Like, what?
So, like, that's how you're going to get your parity because you're going to have certain teams like Missouri that benefit from not having to play a tough schedule, going on the road to play any tough games.
Yeah, and their toughest
But,
game last season was LSU, right?
mm-hmm,
Oh, and let me tell you about the fuckery with that game. I didn't bet that game, but I'm always like watching games, man. Like if I see a spread, I think they were like 8.5. And then like what's his name? Brady Cook throws that
mm-hmm.
fluky ass pass and it goes
Yeah,
pick
I don't like
six.
Brady Cook.
They LSU covered in seconds because of that game.
They won that game. Yeah. The LSU Ole Miss game was even more absurd. I remember first play, Jaden Daniels gets hit stick. It's a scoop six fumble return.
Yeah. So what do you think about LSU? Because like I think this year will be a down year because and Brady and Brian Kelly, listen, Brian Kelly, he started in Central Michigan. I don't know if you knew about this. So his recruiting, the reason why I say like you gotta always go back to your roots in recruiting, because he got the one quarterback for next year, Bryce Underwood, and he is in
Yeah.
Belleville. So Belleville is maybe about 20, 30 minutes away from me. And he's already been to 2 back-to-back state championship games, 1-1. Yeah. He went as a freshman, went as a sophomore, and I think he's about to declassify to be like so he can get there
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
So Brian Kelly he committed to LSU. It was between LSU and Colorado, and he picked LSU. Yeah. But I think LSU is going to probably give him the start right away too, though. However,
Mm-hmm.
so the first game they play is USC, and it's in a neutral site game at Vegas. I think that would. I don't know. That game is kind of crazy to me. What do you think about that one as far as a week 1 game?
It's a must win for both of these teams, because we kind of feel the same way about each of them. You know, LSU, people think they're a little overrated. Brian Kelly used to be viewed as the top dog in the SEC, but now with there being so many great coaches, you know, he has a lot to prove this year. You know, 9, 10 wins isn't good enough. They expect natties there. And they both have the same biggest questions. We know they can put up points on offense. The defense is going to be the biggest concern. And they both got new defensive staffs that are really good. LSU got the defensive coordinator, Blake Baker from Missouri. USC got UCLA's defensive coordinator, DeAnthony Lynn, who is the son of DeAnthony Lynn. So,
Oh, Anthony Lynn.
yeah. Now, the thing with DeAnthony Lynn, though, is that in 1 year, he took UCLA's defense from being the worst in the Pac-12 to the best in the Pac-12. He got Latu drafted in the first round, disciplined team. A lot of the guys from UCLA that were his starters follow him to USC. So if he can rekindle the magic that he did at UCLA at USC, not only could USC win 10 games, but they got a really good shot to win the Big Ten. But you can also say the same thing with LSU. If their defense improves with how good we know their offense is going to be, they got another superstar wide receiver, Kyron Lacey, who will be a first-round pick.
Man,
You know, they got a
that's
top 10
receiver
offensive
you.
line. Yeah,
Receiver
like,
you, bro. That is definitely receiver you. You talk about Malik Neighbors, and I since it's LSU, we might as well talk about that a little bit. This guy was doing it on the Lions joint practices. He was doing it to his teammates the way he is. From what you're saying about Neighbors, I can see it. Because this guy is, and I think Brian Thomas would do something good with Jacksonville. So I think both receivers from LSU would be pretty good.
and the thing with this game is that it sets the tone for the season. Whoever wins, you feel great about their chances to live up to their ceiling. Whoever loses, though, it's way more pressure on the losing head coach. And Brian Kelly, he has more pressure to win this game than Lincoln Riley because of his bad track record in these kinds of week one matchups.
And it's not that, too. It's like Lincoln Riley, even in Oklahoma, never had a defense.
But it was the defensive court. You see, it's not a Lincoln Riley doesn't know defense problem because he has been attached to the same defensive coordinator his whole entire career. Alex Grinch's defense was what you expect out of a Big 12 defense. We want to be small so we can be faster. He wanted to treat every play like the blitz. But you see, the problem with that is now with you moving to a different conference, you can't afford to be smarter, like what you were saying with Rich Rod when he was at Michigan. That's why when they fired him, Lincoln Riley knew that not only did they have to change schematically, but his players had to change from a weight room standpoint. They had to be more bigger, more physical. So everybody on USC's defensive line has gained the combined total of over 400 pounds combined.
Yeah,
You know,
small
they're
ball
putting
doesn't work in big tier conferences, man. Like, And speaking of Rich Rod, he's in Jacksonville State. So, and it's the same scenario. They'll score 100 points, but they can give up 100 points. I mean, it's the same scenario with them every time, man. I got a bet against them week one with Coastal Carolina. I like Basco as a quarterback for Coastal Carolina. I picked them against Jacksonville State. Last year I picked Jacksonville State to win week one because that was their first game in Division One. That's my mindset, but with I love group. I love the small conferences, man. And when I tell you how I keep showing my age, like I remember watching D'Angelo Williams in the Conference USA at Memphis before he was in the Carolina Panthers. You watch these guys, man. Like I'm always into the small ball because I mean it's easy to know the ACC, SEC.
I
Like,
remember
listen, when I
Teddy
grew up in North
Bridgewater when
Carolina
he
as
was
a
at
kid,
Louisville, when it was in the AAC and they
yeah.
beat
See, the
Florida.
AAC is replacing the Big East. So the reason why there's no Big East is because Big East in reality is more of basketball and it's Catholic schools. So their enrollment is a little more different, which is why Connecticut, you see them in football is independent. They're not but in the Big East in basketball, that's where they're in. So Big East, I guess we talk about Big East football back then. Man.
And the American got greatly diminished from what it could have been if you didn't have conference realignment. Because if you would have kept Cincy, UCF and all of their good schools there, that legitimately could have been a better
Is
conference.
UCF independent?
Nah, they're in the Big 12 now, but they
Oh,
also lost.
UCF, my bad. I thought you was talking about South Florida for some reason.
Now, but like if the American was able to keep UCF, SMU, Cincinnati in that conference, they could have been better than what the
Yeah.
ACC is right now.
Yeah. But see, with SMU though, they have a huge NIL, which is why some people don't know they joined the ACC.
But they're paying to be in the ACC,
Yeah,
like
for
their
5 years.
whole
They don't even have
alumni.
to get
Yeah,
paid from the ACC,
yeah. They said we're just going to pay to be in here, 175 million.
and they have the money to do it.
And the thing is, let's say when Florida State and Clemson leave the ACC, SMU can leave it too.
So where do you think they go? Because I hear reports saying that the SEC doesn't want Florida State and Clemson. And I think also it's because of basketball too, right? Because that is SEC basketball is good. People don't pay attention to that.
I think those are a little bit fibs. They can't really say how interested they're in when it comes to adding those schools to their conferences because of the litigations legally that they're going through.
Right.
And
Because I know
with
they're
them still,
suing the ACC right now.
yeah, so like you can't speak on them until like they actually become free agents, but they're going to find a way to wiggle, get out of their grant of rights deal. I mostly think they'll be headed to the Big 12 because the Big 12, unlike
Yeah,
the
I've heard a
other,
lot of reports about Big 12 for sure.
now the Big 12, last thing I want to say before I let you go is that the Big 12 has a legitimate chance to get up to the level that the Big 10, the SEC are because of their new commissioner, Brent Yermark, who used to work under Jay-Z. Now, what he did was he got on the offensive. He saw the SEC, the Big 10 adding schools, so he did the best he could. But also, although the Big 12 schools aren't getting the kind of money that the SEC and Big 10 schools are, the way he's making up for that is by going to outside entities like Allstate. I know you heard the rumors of how they want to have a naming rights agreement and
Yeah, the
call it
fake
the All.
Denzel nigga.
Yeah, so
That's what I call the guy from Allstate, the fake Denzel nigga, bro.
so like Allstate will pay for the naming rights, Big 12 by Allstate,
Yeah,
and
see,
and that money will be used along with the TV money, and it will give those schools more revenue that they will split up, which is how they will close the gap in revenue that they wouldn't make if they were in the SEC or the Big 10. It's not all reliant on the television deal. You see, the television deal that the SEC and the Big 10 have is pretty much worth over $1 billion, and they're splitting that together. Now, the Big 12's TV deal is nowhere as large as that. But the way that they can make up for that is by, having these sponsors with Allstate to
right.
keep having money flowing in, which all those schools get, and they divide it up amongst each other, which is how they'll be able to make the same as the SEC. Because the SEC doesn't need to do these naming rights agreements because, they're already making so much from their TV.
But they have one thing under their belt now. They have Disney. They have ESPN. They have ABC now. And I do think that's different because now that Big Ten is CBS, that did kind of like throw it off. So now that you got ABC is going to be doing a lot of the SEC games, and Big 12 is still doing Fox, right? They're still on Fox
The
too, right?
the Big 12 is kind of like, I think the Big 12 is
It's
ESPN.
ESPN,
Yeah,
Fox,
ESPN Plus, ESPN Plus.
ESPN Plus.
Yeah, like there are Big 10 games, there's Big 12 games you have to watch last year that were ESPN Plus only.
That's
Outrageous.
the only time I actually even watch ESPN Plus is definitely college basketball, football. But I
That's
thought
how they
Big 12,
get you. That's how they get you.
absolutely. But I thought Big 12 was also helping out with Fox because was Cincinnati and Oklahoma Fox? Like I know Fox
Well,
is Big 12 also. I mean Big 10. But I think now that Dion, because remember man, they was promoting Dion so much. I don't think Pac-12 was ever on Fox. And all of a
well,
sudden you see the damn
well,
Buffalo
well,
with
you see
Dion. You're like, they're
what happened
promoting.
was when they got Dion, they made sure that those games were like the networks literally the networks picked the games they wanted, but there were a few Deion Sanders games that were on the Pac-12 network,
Right.
And they didn't really do that good because it's hard to find these Pac-12 games unless you watch them on Stream East or something like that.
Man, listen, Pac-12 destroyed themselves because how you don't have a market in LA. That right there was the downfall.
They
You
could
could
have
have
had
still kept
Texas.
USC.
They could have got Texas and Oklahoma before anybody, but
Man,
they
I
didn't.
remember that. So listen, you said that. I remember they were talking about doing Texas and Oklahoma back when I was in high school. They was about to call like the Mega 16. It was supposed to
Mhm.
be Oklahoma, Texas, a couple other teams going to the Pac-12, and they
But the
were going to call
problem,
it the Mega 16.
but the problem was that Texas had something called the Longhorn Network, and
Yeah.
people didn't like that. So the Pac-12 just like, yeah, we
Now
good
you
off that.
realize, did you ever so the one thing I did find kind of fascinating about that network was the last day of it existing. They threw on the Natty game, the '05 Natty game, and it had a ticker of like the time before it goes, and right after the game, it just vanished, bro. So I'm
Yeah.
about to let you go in a minute, but let's talk a couple minutes. Two games tonight, preseason football, Carolina, New England. Carolina, nobody's playing as a starters. That's already a
Really
red flag to
disappointing.
me because there's a new system and nobody's playing.
Mhm.
Second game, we got Giants and Lions, which we get to see Hendon Hooker for the first time in the
Oh, you
NFL
you
uniform.
you know why we tuning in for these games, man. We want to see Drake May, we want to see Money Hendon, and I want to see Malik Neighbors.
Absolutely, man. It should be interesting, man. Week one, I have the Patriots +9. I have against Cincinnati, and I'm just kind of Cincinnati just starts so slow every season to me, and I don't really know. We don't really know how. I think I heard you say Bengals may win it all as far as the North. I don't know yet
Man,
because
I
every
got
year they go 0-3, 0-4. Like it was a stretch last season where I picked Cincinnati to win 4 or 5 games in a row, and then
yeah,
they were hot until they lost to Houston. And then the next game they
yeah,
played Baltimore, and that's when Joe Burrow messed up his wrist.
yeah,
And they still, I mean, what were they? 8-9, 9-8? No, they were 9-8.
yeah.
But Jake
No, they were
Browning
eight and
was the
nine. They were eight
quarterback.
and nine.
So I'm looking more into New England because the thing that scares me is I don't know if Judon wants to stay with the Patriots. And then you hear about, oh, well, and this is why I don't listen to a lot of the media. Everyone says Joe Milton is outplaying Drake May. I mean, I know Joe Milton when he was in Michigan. So how about let's see him in the game first before you talk shit?
I'm not
Because
I'm not gonna lie to you. A few months ago, after the draft, I made a video titled JT's Theory on Why the Patriots Drafted Joe Milton. And I said this. I said that I would not be surprised if Joe Milton ends up being better than Drake May. He is their insurance plan. Gerard Mayo knows as a defensive minded coach, you got to have a QB. And they said the reasoning for why they took him was because he had too much talent, too much potential to just pass up on. And the NFL, and my reasoning for this wasn't really a skill thing, really. It's really just because the NFL is weird. It's always some random stuff that happens or things that don't go to plan. Joe Milton, him and Drake May are both projects. Drake May is just not as big as a project as what Joe Milton is, but there are still a lot of things that Drake May has to learn. What Joe Milton has in his advantage is that, let's say that he does end up getting coached up because his accuracy does have to improve, but it's not like it can't be improved. The thing with Joe Milton is that he has more experience than Drake May as a starter in a sense. And I do believe in the NFL now. It's also about scheme, who you go to, which OC can best utilize your strengths. Joe Milton
absolutely.
has the strongest arm in the history of football. You feel me? There are teams that aren't going to just force him to change positions right out the gate because everybody's going to try to get the most out of that talent. Because if you can get Joe Milton to just be a halfway decent starter, you got a damn gem with that kind of arm strength and athleticism. So, with how weird the NFL is, I'm not surprised Joe Milton has outperformed Drake May up to this point. Now, I'm with you. We need to see it in the game because we know he's the greatest practice player in the history of
Man, trust me,
football.
bro. Like I knew that from his Michigan days. I'm like, Who?
But it's like the NFL is just weird like that. Like I do think this could be a situation where the dude who was drafted lower ends up exceeding expectations and ends up outplaying the dude who was drafted above him
Yeah.
because the NFL is always random. You
It
know,
happened
things
like that
don't
with the
always go to
Redskins, right?
plan.
RG3, the
And
second
Kirk
overall
Cousins.
pick. They trade everything to the Rams and they get Kirk Cousins in the fourth round. And, I mean,
Same thing with Brock Purdy, Trey Lance. Now, Brock Purdy went the year after Trey Lance, but they weren't expect like Kyle Shanahan never really wanted Trey Lance. You know, that was more of a
honestly
John
though, can
Lynch
I say
play.
something about Brock Purdy? Like, I'm maybe I am a subpar hater to him, bro. Not like that, but like I watched his Iowa State games and
I
he
loved
just
him.
was average. He wasn't like to me. And I know you're looking at me like, what the hell? But when I watch him against Iowa, who is an NFL caliber defense, oh, he was getting fucked up.
But what was Iowa State before Brock Purdy got there?
Nothing.
He gave them their best seasons. And when I watched Brock Purdy, I had him on my radar. Like he was a top 10 QB. I was like, if he goes to the right system, he could be a very good backup and possibly a decent starter. Because what I look for in quarterbacks since the whole Zach Wilson fiasco, can you play well within
That guy,
structure?
bro, that pandemic season saved him. That saved them because BYU weren't playing good teams anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You
Best team
played
they played
Coastal
was
Carolina on a
mm-hmm.
which was a last minute game. It was a last minute game, but
Yeah.
that was the one loss where we're like,
Yeah.
oh,
But the thing after that I learned is that now I change how I evaluate quarterbacks. My number one things was first, do you play well within structure? Can you read defenses? Can you get the ball out fast? You know, how well do you process? Are you accurate? Do you already have the tangibles? If you have that, I'm normally going to be a little bit more biased towards you versus the dudes who more projects. The only dude who I kind of changed my criteria for was Anthony Richardson
that
because
is
the
the
end of
biggest, like, he has like the biggest untapped potential. Cause
and the
it's
thing
like
and the
the little amount that we got. And I'm gonna tell you about like what like these young cats nowadays. The one thing that even Aaron Rodgers said, these quarterbacks who can run and all that, they didn't learn how to slide. Because that
protect
game against
themselves.
Houston, he went crazy, and then he got a concussion because he couldn't take a hit the right way. You know, it's just certain things like that, man. It's just like you see Kyler Murray with that baseball mentality. He slides. Russell Wilson used to slide. I mean, Mahomes does it. Quarterbacks like that, you need to have instincts. Oh shit, I might get my ass laid out. Let me go ahead and
But
slide.
at the same time, when you 6'5", 255 pounds, running 4'4", you're Derrick Henry at
Yeah, but I mean,
QB.
look what happened to Cam Newton. That weird. Well, I always said what happened with Cam Newton was when he got into that car accident when his truck flipped over and had that surgery.
Yeah. He
That
was
to me
never the
is when I think
same.
started it. And he
Yeah.
still had that hell of a
Plus, they were
season. Then
using him
after
like a running
that,
back.
he
So,
still had
like,
the same shoulder injury
yeah.
over and over. Then there was a foot injury. And at that point,
But with Brock Purdy, though, like, he was different because I looked at him, I was like, bro, like, you get the ball out fast, you play well within structure, you throw with great timing and anticipation. And I'm looking for those three traits because those are the three most important traits: your ability to read defenses, the ability to throw with anticipation, good accuracy. Those are the three traits that normally translate the best to the NFL.
see,
And
I
that's
could coach against this guy because I the one problem he had, he still has it now. When you get all up in his face, he doesn't think. And that's why I said that when I watched those games against Iowa, when they blitz him, he cannot find a way to throw the ball. The game against Kansas City, how do you think they prevented that through a field goal? You pressure him, he can't sit there and he can't think quick enough to throw the ball.
but those are the ways, but those are how those Kyle Shanahan offenses are structured. It's like it's all about timing, rhythm, and when you mess that up, like the Christmas game against the Baltimore Ravens, you feel me? Mike McDonald, who's now with Seattle, Seattle's being incredibly underlooked. They could have
Seattle
the
is
best,
underrated, bro. I listen. See,
yeah,
every year,
they're
Seattle
underrated.
just they. I mean, I know it was Pete Carroll, but they're a typical Northwest team. They adapt to everywhere they go. You
But
know,
they consider Mike McDonald to be the Sean McVay of defensive-minded coaches.
I can see that. I got them on over 7.5 this year.
I do too.
This, and you know what? I think I would feel more comfortable if Sam Howell plays than Geno Smith. Sam Howell didn't play bad with Washington. What now? The thing I have a problem with Washington still is offensive line. Sam Howell was getting chewed up every fucking play he had.
He's too Jameis Winston for me. And I love Jameis because I've won so much money utilizing him as my QB1 in fantasy football. Like my homeboys always talk about it. He's like, bro, you really had Jameis Winston. But the thing with Jameis Winston is he was a cheat code. Like touchdowns were 6, interceptions -2. If you throw
30 for
3
30,
interceptions
man.
but 5 touchdowns, you feel me? You still gave me 20 points. But Sam Howell, with Mike McDonald being the defensive coach, he probably much rather would prefer the QB who takes care of the football. And Geno Smith, he wasn't that bad to me. As a matter of fact, like I don't really think he's that much of the problem. The ceiling is limited with him. So eventually you do want to get a QB that, because they did want Anthony Richardson. You know, if he was available.
I remember that because they got Weatherspoon, right?
Yeah.
Which I think that panned out. That panned out greatly.
Exactly.
Anyway.
But it's like, you know, with Brock Purdy and that offense, you know, I believe that he truly is an elite QB because he throws with elite accuracy and anticipation. Like, you just don't go from a 4th-stringer getting no first-team reps at all to just dominating. Like, this dude has he hasn't lost too many games since he has taken over as a starter. So that's very rare to me. And the way that he throws guys open is very rare as well. It's just that what I think people overlook about Brock Purdy is they confuse potential to where somebody was drafted instead of just assessing the player for just the player and not where they were drafted at. Because if he was a 1st-round pick, nobody would be talking about him the way that they do. And what has me so encouraged about Brock Purdy is that last year was his rookie season pretty much. That was his first full year being a starter.
First full year, right.
He's going in. He's already been to the conference championship twice. And who knows what would have happened if he stayed healthy against Philadelphia. Imagine what he could do his 3rd season now. His 2nd full-time season starting.
Well, I have concerns because they're already talking about Christian McCaffrey's not playing out on the preseason because he has a strained calf. With the same calf injury he's been having since Carolina days.
The Madden curse. But listen,
I said that about Josh Allen too until he had a hell of a comeback all the way to the end of the season. I said the same thing about that.
Anytime you're in the Kyle Shanahan scheme, any running back they put there is going to give you good production. But CMC is on a different level, though.
Do you know why? So you saying Shanahan. Do you remember Mike Shanahan?
Yeah.
So let's take it back to Denver Broncos Shanahan.
Yeah, Terrell Davis.
The last so I know you saw it on my story. The last 1,500 rusher they had was Clinton Portis. Mm-hmm. But they used to plug in running backs like because they do that zone blocking. So they had this guy named bro, I forgot this guy's name, bro. It was like Quentin something. Bro, he had like this is when ESPN used to do the Sunday Night Football games. This is how I'm telling you, I'm so old to remember this shit. Hence 2K5, that was Sunday Night Football type thing. So bro, they used to have like 3-4 Ruben Drones. Bro, they had like running backs that like you don't even know about, but they were still having like productive games. We're talking about 120-yard games, 2 touchdowns. I mean, the zone blocking is what makes that system so great. So why McCaffrey, who honestly, I like Christian McCaffrey, but I thought Tyreek Hill should have won Offensive Player of the Year. But because he you know, he didn't play a couple games, that affected him. But you know, I have questions with San Fran because I think this defense is getting soft. And I think that the playoffs showed it. You know, the Packers were smash mouth against them. The Lions, until Dan Campbell gave up the game, was smash mouth with them. And Kansas City, when they needed to, they grinded it out with Pacheco. And then, you know, obviously, what was it? Was it a play action fake for the game-winning touchdown? So, I mean, they've been, I don't know. Like, Bosa, you know, Bosa shows up, but
man, he's kind of been the problem. Like he's kind of been a little ever since they paid him. He's kind of been a little bit ghost. Like
and then they traded for Chase Young, who didn't do shit.
Yeah, like that. Man, I thought he was gonna go
You know, then you look at the
crazy.
offensive line. Yes, I like Trent Williams, but after Trent Williams, who else is
Yeah,
there?
they do got some concerns there. Yeah.
You know, and like that's how. And now this contract with Aiyuk, it's a mess. It's a mess, and it's like I said. Now we got John Lynch at the GM. I remember him smashing heads in Tampa Bay, in
Number
Denver.
47.
Man,
White boy
come
DB.
on, man. Commentator, GM. So I mean, like, and he admit that he messed up on Trey Lance. I give him that because some GMs don't even say that.
Hey,
But
one thing about Mike Tomlin I respect is that, once they went up to Kenny Pickett, because I never was a fan of Kenny Pickett. I
oh,
wanted
that was
Malik
a horrible
Willis.
draft for quarterbacks.
But like I respect Mike Tomlin because he went up to Kenny Pickett. He was like, "Hey, bro, we about to bring in some competition." Kenny Pickett was like, "Nah, I ain't okay with that. I ain't trying to compete." Trade that boy to Philadelphia.
Trey
I
with
was like,
Philly to
that
be
was
the
quick.
backup, man.
That was quick.
It's just crazy because like even like me being here in Detroit, seeing like what the GM has been doing. I remember like now the reason why I stopped being a Lions fan was Matt fucking Millen. And if you look at Matt Millen's track record, I think the only guy was Calvin Johnson that's been relevant. You know,
Mhm.
he drafted Joey Harrington. I don't even think you know what Joey Harrington is.
Oh, the quarterback.
Justin
Oregon.
Herbert's role model. Yes, Joey fucking Harrington, bro. This dude ended up having an irregular heartbeat to the point that he wasn't shit. And I remember it was a Thanksgiving game when we played Miami. They played the Lions. He beat them. So that tells you the Lions was just always like they drafted a receiver. They drafted Mike Williams, which if you remember Mike, I don't think you know about Mike Williams. Mike Williams was a 6'5" receiver from USC
USC.
with
Yeah, I
Matt
remember him
Leinart.
off Madden. Yeah, he used to be
Yep, he
nice.
didn't play because he was too young, kind of like Maurice Corrett, which Maurice Corrett is the reason why I pay attention to Ohio State. Him and Chris Gamble, which everyone talks about Travis Hunter, but Chris Gamble was the first original one. He was playing receiver,
And Charles
corner.
Woodson.
Yeah, he was playing receiver, and then having check Braylon Edwards the next drive. You know, which I know Travis Hunter is going to get his money. He's going to get paid for sure. But like, you know, the game has changed, but with the Lions, I remember Matt Millen, they had like you could probably look it up on YouTube. They had a like a football life about him. And you know, he was a Super Bowl winning linebacker. You know, he played with the Niners, he played with the Raiders, but it was a time where his son was on there and was like, I remember my dad say, DeMarcus Ware is going to be one of the greatest linebackers out of this draft. We should get him. And then
Facts,
somebody
man.
suggested to him, let's get another receiver to help out Roy
Mm-hmm.
Williams.
And
Well,
Dallas
they
was
draft
that
Mike
Dallas was
Williams.
that and Dallas was happy as hell. They could not
3 picks
believe it.
later, DeMarcus Ware goes.
They could not believe it.
So, you know, it's crazy we're allowed to turn around with some of these teams, but you know, I appreciate your time, man. This has been a great conversation. You guys check out JT Sports Podcast. I'll leave the link in the description, man. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and let's get this money.
Absolutely.
Anything you want to say, man? Any shout outs, anything, man? The floor is yours, brother.
Man, make sure y'all go rate the JT Sports Podcast, Apple, Spotify, all podcasting platforms, 5 stars. Subscribe to JT Sports on YouTube. And I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, anytime when you need me on during the season, I'm all down for it.
Absolutely.
Just like that, out.